Okay, so I've done some mock-up here. Again, this is the old Grady chassis. I've done some measuring on it. Got the body up on the lift. And near as I can tell, and from little things I've seen online, I need to cut right here, first cut. It's about 2 inches behind the mount for the parking brake. And then I need to remove back to about this location right here. So once I get that cut, then I can see what's inside here and go from there. Other than that, what I found is here's the back mount for where the back of the floor pan structure is, and right about here is where the body sits. That's this corner right here. So what I have to do is figure out how to make these angles work, because the floor pan, you look at it as a taper. It kind of gets wide right about where that cutout or that tape is, and so I need to taper it somewhat to make it fit the shape of the tub. So we'll see how it goes. I think I can figure it out though. I'm making a little progress on the dune buggy. I talked before about where I was going to cut, and I've actually made my first cut here right behind the parking brake, like I was saying, and I started the second cut, and then I thought, well, you know, I better do some other things here. Got a little ahead of myself. So I went ahead and pulled the engine off. It's sitting on a jack, and now I'm separating the transaxle. And what as I'm doing this, I'm still learning about these things. There's 3 bolts down here on the axle tube, and one of them holds the snubber that would normally be on the car. If it was bottoming out, it would hit the body, and that's what this is here. There we go. And that was mounted up on top. I may not need that anymore. So take that off. I've also taken out the bolts back here on the back of the, I guess, frame structure, however you want to label it. There's 2. There's one on either side there underneath those red mounts. And then up where that other red mount is, if you can see it, I've already taken the nuts off right here. See my finger, and separated those off, and now I'm just trying to figure out how to get the transaxle loose, and it shouldn't take much. I've already disconnected the shifter linkage. I've separated the brake lines, and I've also removed the parking brake so that the cables are free and they should be able to slide back through the housing. So I'll give it a shot and see what happens. That seemed to work. May not be the best technique in the world, but I've got the transaxle out. Still have the parking brake cables, and those I can just pull out. So that's not a big deal. But everything else is separated, and now I can really start working on chopping down the frame. Slow progress, I guess, but it's working. I completed the initial cuts of this center section here, and I wanted to see what was in there. This is quite interesting. Everything in here is a solid tube. Everything, except for the clutch cable. And I guess probably the throttle cable in there somewhere. But there's a little handle here. I think that was one of the heater controls. And that tube runs down here. I'm just going to have to cut that out. But the thing is, I have to shorten up all of these tubes in one way or another. So this is a bit of a challenge. I'll have to do some research on that and maybe just start cutting, hope for the best. We'll see. But anyway, just wanted to show you that and make some progress from there. I've cut some of the lines out, the heater control lines, and started looking at these other ones. I'll have to figure out how to shorten things up here, but these upper 2 are the parking brake, and I'll just have to see if I can get it loose underneath the bracket here somehow, and just when I move things forward, let it take up space. Of course, this is your this pipe here is the shift linkage, so I'll have to shorten that as well. And then we've got these other ones. One is a throttle cable and clutch are inside. These are actually, I thought they were flexible, but they're not. They're actually solid lines. But what really surprised me here, look down right here. This is the fuel line. And when I moved it, I noticed that it was shiny. When I moved to remove the other lines, and I thought, boy, that looks a little shiny there, like there's the metal rubbing together. I moved it just a little bit, and gas started pouring out of it. So that could have been a big issue down the road had this ever even stayed together as a regular bug. That line chattering against another one could have been a real serious issue, and that would have been a bugger to fix. So it gives me an opportunity at this point to remove that and replace it with a better line, and be safer. So now I gotta just figure out how to shorten up these other tubes here and continue on. Well, I'm going to do something even if it is wrong. What I did here was I took apart the shifter, and now the shifter tube, you can move it forward and aft. And on the end of the shifter, it had this connector, kind of a knuckle, that went on the end of the drive shaft, or the shaft down there on the transmission. I know that I have a length to remove of 14 3/4 inches, so that's what I did. I slid the tube forward, I cut it off, brought it back, and cut off the 14 3/4. And now what I'm going to do is MIG weld the U-joint, whatever you want to call it, connector back onto the tube, and that'll take care of the tube, and then I can start worrying about these other pieces. And what I found on this these tubes for the parking brakes and everything, if you look here, you'll see there's a plate structure in here, and there's the tube for the clutch, and then down here is the tube for the throttle, and deep inside, up underneath here, is the parking brake tubes, which come out back here. I went and looked at the old chassis, which makes a good reference, and discovered that they had actually cut out the that reinforcement piece over here and exposed the tube for the clutch and the tube for the throttle. And then I started thinking, well, what did they do for the parking brakes? Well, it's kind of hard to see, but they just cut it. There's about a 1/4 inch gap on either side where they had just shortened up the tubes. And this one's a little bit bigger, you can see it there. And you can see the tube is still floating inside there. What's unique about these is this thing had 3 parking brakes. But this center one didn't do anything. It had these 2, and I guess the intent was you want to go out and have some fun, you could yank one and cut a donut quicker, yank the other one and go the other way, you know. And I wanted to show you this, just how bad this old chassis is. You see what's missing here is the clutch pedal. This is your gas pedal, your brake, which hasn't moved in ever, and this is where the clutch was. So you know it's bad when the clutch pedal actually rusts off of the assembly. And here's the pedal over here. I just thought that was funny. Just shows you how bad that thing was. But anyway, here's got my welding rig set up here, and what I have is a Lincoln 140 MIG welder, and then down there is a flux core MIG. I've got a chop saw up here on top, all my clamps and everything in place. I built this about a year ago, and then I've got my bottle back here and a little grinder. So it's kind of an all-in-one welding rig. But anyway, I'm going to weld that tube together and continue on. I'm going to give you one little tip before I welded this on. this end of the shaft here, you know, it's very important to have it aligned so it shifts properly. One thing I noticed, and it's kind of hard to see in here, there's a weld seam. This is not a extruded tube. It's got a weld, you know, it's like a wrap tube, and then it's got the seam. Well, I marked the seam here. Now it's kind of hard to see with this camera, but that's where my thumb is. It's got the black mark. And then I did the same thing. Found the seam on the other half, so that'll give me an alignment. And then what I'm going to do is I'll take this piece of angle iron and I'll clamp it underneath so it makes the tube stay square, and then the other piece will sit in here, and I'll line up the marks, and I've beveled the edges, and then I'll tack it and weld it in place. And the angle iron will make sure it stays square, and of course the marks give me my alignment. So just a little tip for you. Well, I've decided I have to get creative. So the measurement I'm cutting out is 14 3/4 inches in this case. And what I decided to do, I already made a cut, initial cut to this pan, cut the basic shape out of it. And then what I'm going to have to do is, it's kind of odd the way this is laid out, but the body, it ends right here, basically back here. But this line needs to be back here. But I can't just cut straight across because the taper won't work out. So I'm going to have to do some interesting cuts here and leave this section and bring it all the way back to where it kind of fits into here. And I'll have to just show you that when I get to it. As far as the inner structure here, I finished up welding the shifter shaft, and now I have these two top tubes, which are the parking brakes, and I want to keep those. Now on the other vehicle, they cut a big hole back here to make room for those to go. I've changed the idea a little bit. What I'm going to do is cut this tube off somewhere probably right in the middle here, and then I'll come forward 14 3/4 inches, or maybe 15 inches, leave a little gap, and cut it off again. And then whenever I feed this together, these tubes, which are the clutch and the throttle cable, those tubes should push all the way back out, back out of this hole in the back. But these other two tubes, they're going to just slide in, and my theory or thought is that once they get back to this point, I can reach inside and bend them over to match the other tube. I doubt that I'll weld them together. I might, but I don't think I need to. Just so they're in the same alignment, it'll work. Other than that, I just need to cut out the center section here and, you know, again, figure out this slice and make it work. So I don't know if it's exactly the way everybody does it, but that's the way I'm doing it.